So, this is the About Philip section, the section about me, and I hope I won't drag on for too long. But if I do, please know that you can just walk away and keep exploring my portfolio. I am originally from a small town called Silverdalen, Silver Valley in English, which lies just next to Lönneberga, the place where Astrid Lindgren's Emil books are set. And, as is with smaller towns like that, you often must make your own fun. Therefore, my interests are, to say the least, spread out across many activities and subjects. I read a lot, mostly theory or classics, which I started to delve deeper into the first thing I did after finishing the Swedish gymnasium by studying literature at university. I have always drawn, so much that I eventually moved to Gothenburg to study printmaking in my early 20s. I watch movies and TV shows, both old and new, animation and live action, Hollywood blockbusters and niche art house films. I am interested in music too. I compose my own songs and have even gotten the chance to perform them at certain events. I am very invested in trying to live healthy. I eat a hefty amount of vegetables each day and I love to run and cross-train. But of course, if it wasn't already obvious, I also spend a lot of time, if not playing, then writing or thinking about video games and its medium. It's the reason I moved all the way up to Boden to study game design. I want to involve myself with the building and structuring of the mechanics of gameplay to make them real for other people to engage with through the praxis of gaming. With the polyphonic voices of the medium, which presents the simulation, open the door to a meaningful experience. If you want to delve deeper into the secrets of who I am, collect all the stars to open the doors underneath the About Philip room. You'll know there's a star somewhere around you if you hear light chimes. But wait, just hearing or knowing where they are might not be enough. By munching the broccoli around the stage, you'll grant access to the incredible firearm that lies beyond these bars. And with it, you can blast both my portraits and my video game project posters to smithereens. Solar Struggle was my first game project working with a larger team of programmers, artists and designers. We were 9 people in total, where I was 1 out of 2 designers, and we had a little less than 2 weeks to create a video game based on a theme of future mobility and transportation of people and goods in the fossil-free city of tomorrow. The goal of the game is to find and bring back a lost kitten to its sad mom. But venturing out in the dark draws the player character's battery life. You then must traverse different platforming and puzzle obstacles to find sunspots in which you can recharge your battery to keep going. The process of creating the game was occasionally quite hectic, since we only had about 2 weeks to come up with, develop, and try to polish the game before we were supposed to present it in front of our industry people. During development, I was mainly in charge of level design, where I created the introductory area and the game's last water obstacle, both revolving around basic platforming in conjunction with the battery drainage of the player character. I also situated the other team members' puzzles across the map layout I had made, and decided where the battery charging sunspots were supposed to be. I contributed as sound designer too, where I recorded and edited all sounds of the game using Foley and provided the game with a music track. I lastly did some 2D sprites describing controls and some light narrative. Moreover, I had also volunteered to be the project manager, a role I did my best to fulfill, and being as inclusive as I could, and incorporate as many spontaneous ideas as possible in the hopes to make the project everyone's. In hindsight, this had both its ups and downs, with a game that can sometimes feel a bit janky, but in the end still has heart. I was one out of 14 people working on the Phantoms of the Opera, which is an online co-op puzzle game set inside a mysterious theater. Separated by being either on the bottom or upper floor of this building, the players must communicate and cooperate to solve 9 puzzle rooms to find a way to break the shackles that bind them to this place. Our team was given the theme Symbiosis, which we approached, in terms of gameplay, as the dependency between 2 beings to achieve success. In this case, 2 lost souls inside a theater building suspended in the afterlife. I contributed with gameplay, puzzle, and audio design, as well as some marketing. For the game's soundtrack, I used some old piano improvisations I made years past and layered live recorded notes from a melodica that I had in my apartment on top of them in Audacity. If you'd like to hear more about my puzzle design, I suggest you head up the stairs to the right, where I can explain more in detail what I did. I based my puzzles on a light script of a door opening mechanic that I learned during a previous course because I knew I could pull it off. This enabled me to utilize and develop the usages of that mechanic and turn it into 3 subsequent puzzles for our game. I emphasized on a puzzle design that was about affecting the traversal opportunities of each of the rooms for the 2 players. By stepping on switches in one room, causing platforms to rise in the other, and as such create changes to the game space for the players to engage with, that enacted both as obstacle and solution, and which engagement had immediate and direct consequences for the player. The online elements of the game were developed during most of the project's time. With that in mind, I designed my puzzles to be compatible with split screen, since that would be our solution if the online play wouldn't work out. When online play was established as the one way to play our game, player communication via voice chat became necessary to reduce frustration or misunderstanding between the participants trying to solve the puzzles together, since they now wouldn't share the same screen. Harvest Time is a card game for 2 to 4 players, where the goal is to be the first one in the group to fully grow your crop to its 4th and last level. To do this, every player must play one of their 2 weather cards, sun or rain card, each round. The total outcome of weather cards in conjunction with 1 out of 6 randomized season cards decides the outcome of the weather each round. There is a total of 4 crop cards: apple, cabbage, potato, and wheat, each with their own weather needs to be able to grow each round and their own special perks. Some cards are immune to certain season effects, and so on. When creating the game, we were given the theme of weather and limited to designing the game with a total of 18 cards. We could use the backside of each card without it counting as a separate card. For the development of the game, I helped with designing the actual game loop, but also in designing the UI and art for the cards themselves. When we designed this game, we were visited by 2 members of the Swedish Board Game Association, and they were so impressed by our game that they wanted it included in a box set together with other card games to be sold around local toy stores around the northern of Sweden. The bundle was named Väderlekarna, or the Weather Games in English. I didn't expect to publish a game a mere 3 months after I first initiated my game design studies, but I feel very humbled by the experience. ECOCIDE is a wave-based single-player action first-person thrower game set in the last still-standing grove of the forest, which also operates as the game's arena. The player takes on the role as the embodiment of the forest, using brute force and natural phenomena to defend the last trees and defeat the increasing number of invading forces. The theme of this project was natural phenomena, which made me pitch Princess Mononoke meets Doom to my team. Instead of regular first-person gunplay, the player must utilize clawing, grabbing and throwing enemies into each other or environmental hazards to deal damage and restore lost health, as well as eating them to regain mana. Mana that is used to perform forces of nature such as tornadoes and vines to blow away or pull enemies to them. My contribution to this project was gameplay design, combat design, level design, UI, audio design, and I was also Scrum Master. We were 13 people developing this game for 7 weeks. I presented the core concepts of the game to my team, and as in most wave-based games, ECOCIDE is about surviving multiple waves of enemies, but your health pool is assigned to the number of trees that are still standing, making the defense of them the survival of the player as well. The player then doesn't take damage from the enemies who is shooting directly at them, but they get stunned instead, which creates the obstacle in defending the trees. To mitigate an issue with the player from just having all but one tree cut down to have less trees to care about will result in a lower end game score. For the combat design, to further differentiate the game from the traditional arena and wave-based gameplay of running and gunning, I presented the enemies to be both the bullets and ammo for the player. As such, the player would need to either walk up to an enemy to grab them or pulling them in from a distance using the vine ability for the enemy to then be turned into a bullet to be thrown at other enemies. I worked closely with all programmers responsible for coding the abilities and their effects into the game, both on site as well as remote, communicating and iterating both through dialogue, textual descriptions and drawings that I made. On top of being responsible for the core gameplay designs, I was also Scrum Master during development. I took this role very seriously, since I am very keen on having every member of any type of group project to be on board with what needs to be done and in good spirits. I therefore conducted a meeting during the first day of the project where the purpose was to get to know each other a little better, discuss our life structures and how we could puzzle it all together to be able to cooperate in the best way and create the best product possible. Every Friday I held a weekly retrospective where we discussed the sprints and looked at the upcoming week's work and how we felt in achieving our goals. These meetings were always fruitful in my opinion and provided stability within the group.
Holistica was a project funded by the European Union and in cooperation with Changemaker Educations and alongside other institutions around Europe, where me and my two teammates, Leo and Joel, were asked to present a print-and-play board game design to a jury that incorporated ideas from the principles of the new European Bauhaus and develop an educational game that could teach people in a fun and engaging way about what it means to be and how to become a post-human architect. That is, to decentralize the human from the anthropocentric viewpoints that otherwise is so prevalent in our culture, and to assist in creating new ways of thinking and acting in sustainable behaviors. We were successful in this endeavor and got to travel to the University of Aalborg in Denmark to playtest our game together with other participants in the EU project. The game then is a cooperative one for up to 1 to 4 players, but it is possible to play this game with an even larger group if the people playing give space for everyone to make their voice heard. The goal is to complete 5 out of 10 request cards without reaching their lose conditions, while also maintaining the environmental and non-human species represented as 20 affected cards, 5 of each type: forest, geological mineral, water and wildlife, from getting exhausted by the player's actions, which then also results in a loss. Requests usually comes from providing your promising society with a building that is represented by 1 out of 9 building cards, but it could also be that of showing your ability to balance human wants and environmental peace by withholding such procedures. To execute actions, the player must choose how to utilize 4 roles: social worker, environmentalist, economic and technician, to make the best decisions to keep in balance with the affected cards. Beyond these cards, there is also 17 event cards, which provide each round with a random event, be it natural or unnatural, that influences each round, and 10 progress tokens to keep track of the progression of building procedures. For me, this was a very fulfilling experience, both from a game design perspective, but also from getting to know all the other participants in the project when we were in Denmark playtesting the game, gathering feedback for the final release. If you want to know more about the EU project or download and print out the game yourself, use the QR codes over at the stairs. Early in development, I proposed to my team that we'd lean into game design that revolves around the act of balance, since it is, in my opinion, one of the things that contemporary culture lacks regarding human societal infrastructures contra the world it inhabits. It was through this initial concept that the game's affected cards were sprung. To translate some of the concepts of the post-human architecture project, I read through documents sent to me, where they had tried to pinpoint terms and goals with their mission. It was through that reading I could turn foundational pillars in the PHA project and convert them into gameplay variables and present to my team, such as the role tokens. But while the design and game loop was established quite quickly, the design of the material, whom I was responsible for, became the bulk of the work. This is my first real solo game project, Window. It's a first-person puzzle platformer with movement and different kinds of unlockable maneuvering tools as its focus. Working solo gives me a chance to explore and learn the engine and how to implement my designs both from a technical and a gameplay standpoint. I'm currently working on it, but I hope to be able to share more about it soon.